Recently, the headlines read that a shooter had killed 10 people in Buffalo, New York. In 2015, a gunman walked into a church in South Carolina, sat down next to a group of people, pulled out a gun, and killed 9 people. At a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, in 2019, 23 people were killed and 26 were wounded. There is one common thread behind all of these terrible crimes: hate groups and individuals that had extremist beliefs. Today, we have a guest who will talk about the mindset of such groups and individuals. He has decades of experience studying individuals and groups who commit such acts. He's considered a national expert on such issues. Please welcome today's guest, Lowell Smith. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm a little tired. Worked the graveyard shift last night, but operating on 3 hours sleep. So yeah, pardon me if I'm a little slow here today, but hey, that's the nature of the beast of my business sometimes. So, sir, tell us, where were you born and where'd you grow up?
I was born in Long Beach, California, and grew up primarily in Santa Ana, California, over in Orange County.
Very well. I know that area very good. I was a Marine down in Southern California for 3 out of 4 years, so I know that area very, very well.
And, El Toro.
yeah, exactly. And my wife is from Southern California, so Orange County pretty good in the Southern California area. And it's a beautiful place. It has some beautiful beaches and beautiful places and good people, just like anywhere else. Though we know sometimes there's some not so good people and some ugly type of individuals. So, what schools did you attend down there?
Well, elementary school, I went to New Hope. Then I went to Fitz Intermediate down in Santa Ana. Then I went to Los Amigos High School in Fountain Valley. Basically graduated from there. Then after graduation, I actually went into the military. I joined the military, went into the United States Coast Guard.
Oh, all right. Okay, well, we won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I thought I was going to join the Coast Guard, do search and rescue, be on a nice boat in sunny Southern California, and ended up chose my rate, in which I didn't care for it. Then when Reagan became president, he had a big push for law enforcement, so I rose my hand to go to law enforcement school and EMT school. Then everything progressed from there. And I actually spent most of my time overseas. I was in Guam and the Philippines, and I got sent to Europe.
Okay. So yeah, that's something I forgot about. If we have U.S. territories or people, countries associated with us, they also have a Coast Guard there and military services often. Interesting.
Right. And so we're basically from Loran stations back in the day. Lorans are outdated and mostly been discontinued now due to we have satellite navigations, but kind of just basically all over the world with the Coast Guard. So it's a very unique experience.
Gotcha. Were you ever involved in like drug interdiction or anything like that?
Yeah, drug interdiction. We did a lot of that, a lot of primarily security type issues, navigation issues. I went to law enforcement school. I volunteered. They sent me through a modified police academy up in Modesto, and to be a federal boarding officer, primarily for drug interdiction.
All right. Thank you. Very interesting. And so then what did you do after your military experience?
Got out and wasn't quite sure what I really wanted to do. And I started just tinkering around a little bit. Then I went to work security, in which I worked for a company that's now out of business, but I worked high risk security for them as a supervisor. I actually had a canine, a protection dog for them. Then I got into doing some executive protection up for the company up in Beverly Hills. And
wow.
For a while, then I commute to Orange County to Beverly Hills, got pretty old. And then I had
the famous LA traffic. Yes.
I
totally understand.
And then I had the opportunity. I really wanted to go back to school. And I had a good opportunity by joining the Orange County Probation Department, which would allow me to go back to school. So I took that opportunity.
Very good. Very good. And how long then were you with the Orange County Probation Department?
Oh, wow. It was like 26 and a half years. It's kind of unique. When I went in, I worked primarily juvenile supervision, in which we worked 3 days a week. So I had 4 days off a week, or we worked our 40 hours in 3 days so I could go to school at one of our facilities. I worked primarily juvenile hall, then I worked at a camp, but then I helped open the max security unit that were for juveniles that were either being tried as adults or going to the California Youth Authority back at the day. Then during the process, I wasn't expecting it. I ended up meeting somebody and getting married. And so I was kind of toying with the idea of going into federal law enforcement. That's why I was looking for the college degree. But what I wanted to do, what my desire was, work in narcotics. I didn't want to really put the family through it, that type of thing. So I decided to stay focused and working with probation. Then I decided to promote out of the field, in which I don't know if it was my background working narcotics for the Coast Guard. I went to be a probation officer. Then I was still on probation, and after walking into two major meth labs and marijuana grow back in the the 90s, late 90s, they moved me to what was called the Probation Offender Search and Seizure Enforcement, the Posse unit. I really had no caseload. Any of my caseload were informants. So I had informants from, sales. Some informants were tied to cartels. And it gave me a chance to work with a lot of regional narcotic units, the Drug Enforcement Agency, California Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement for a while. So I basically did that for a while. Then due to the budget cuts, they shut our dope unit down, and we became special enforcement. And I was liaison with the California DOJ, Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, Violence Suppression Unit.
Mm-hmm.
We had a probation officer call me up and ask me if I could take the team over there to see this guy who came to see him. And he came in to his office, and a probation officer was African American, and the guy had a swastika necklace on. So we came out there, and I swear I thought I walked into the Third Reich. I mean, there's neo-Nazi stuff all over the walls, Adolf Hitler, Himmler, and he turned out to be the state leader of the domestic terrorist group Aryan Nations. And that was back in 1999, June 2nd, 1999. That's how impactful. I still remember the date we did the raid, and it was out of county. It was up in Long Beach. And he wasn't there. I confiscated a lot of stuff, tracked him down. It ended up, I arrested him over the course of supervision several times for violations, but something snapped. I love history, but just seeing that whole neo-Nazism, and that triggered it. I've been working white supremacist groups ever since then.
Well, I was just going to ask you, knowing I worked in, as you know, California, 10 years, part of that Marine Corps, and 6 years Folsom Prison. So I was very familiar with the Aryan Brotherhood, and then we had the Nazi lowriders come on. The P9 also was just starting to surface, and of course we had a lot of the Skinhead, Peckerwoods, other groups. I know a lot of times in the drug world there are independent dealers, but in California, especially Southern California, it's kind of unique. Those gangs, they tend to target at least larger dealers, no matter who they are, either working for drug cartels as distribution or taxing groups, or they will target independent dealers for extortion or drug rips, that kind of thing. So did you encounter any of that down there in Orange County?
Yeah, actually, there was several times we had some of the localized skinheads, some of the guys associated with NLR and P9 that would be taxing some of the local drug dealers on the streets, and a couple of them got in trouble with that. Because they were taxing people that actually had ties to maybe the MA and some of those things, or to the brand. And a couple of guys that, got shanked because of some of the issues associated with that.
Yes. And for our viewers, maybe who are not familiar with some of those terms, a lot of times we speak in acronyms because we know, but P9 would be public enemy number one, correct? They started off my understanding as a kind of a skinhead group, and then evolved kind of into a prison gang. We have Nazi lowriders, who are another group that were kind of junior to the Aryan Brotherhood, did a lot of their dirty work on the prison units in the California Department of Corrections. And then of course the brand would be Aryan Brotherhood. The brand is just another name for that group. So I would imagine you did encounter a lot of those groups. Was there any individuals, key individuals or leaders of those groups that you recall that you dealt with?
Well, I've been involved. I did so long. I've been involved with some of the top leadership of the Aryan Brotherhood. I've been involved and supervised some of the top leadership of the Nazi lowriders. And I know of all the leadership of Public Enemy One and P9. I was on the show Gangland for them. And I've dealt with a lot of them and their associates over the years. And actually, I've even ran into a couple after I retired.
Yeah. That's always
But
kind of tense situation. Yeah, I think they even had the Aryan Brotherhood federal RICO trial down in Orange County. So, yes, Orange County is a hotbed. I think most people who are not in our world maybe think of Orange County as like Disneyland and stuff, but it's very diverse. Orange County is very diverse and has very, very upscale, rich neighborhoods, and it has some very poor neighborhoods. There are ghettos. A lot of people don't know it. And of course, Disneyland doesn't want to announce this. There are ghettos just outside the gates of Disneyland, barrios and some very poor, despondent neighborhoods and individuals. So, yeah, it's very diverse. I know Orange County is. So, and of course, you worked it there all the time for many years. And so, why did you start teaching for La Sierra?
Well, I retired in 2014 from probation department. I was already in my doctoral program and doing some research, and I wanted to actually start taking my knowledge elsewhere to some of the people who might want to have careers in some sort of the criminal justice field or social work or anything like that. And I took a couple of years off and basically kind of tried to learn to play golf. I'm still trying to do that. And then I had an opportunity to adjunct for them, and they wanted someone with probation experience for community corrections. So I went ahead and I started doing an adjunct professor, and they liked me so much. After the second year, they brought me on full time. And the following year after that, I became department chair and ran the whole department for a couple of years like that, and which was the largest academic program at La Sierra University.
Very good, very good. Then what kind of courses do you mainly teach? And can you tell us a little bit then also about the mindset maybe of some of the individuals? I imagine you cover that, the not only the groups and the individuals, but that mindset behind these hate groups. Can you tell us a little bit about what you focus on, what you present, and again, why do they do all this crazy, these hate crimes, these mass shootings, and just vicious hate towards other people? Are they mentally ill, or do they know exactly what they're doing and just despise other people so much that they commit these atrocious acts? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's really a really complicated, unique. It's really hard to determine. If not, we would be able to make those changes right away. Basically, what I found throughout the course of my experience and both my live experience, professional experience in the field, and I used to go into homes, I supervise them, I talk to them. And I think it's really important that people understand when we're looking at the white supremacist groups, we have different types. We have the ones that I would call needle Nazis type that do the meth and heroin. It's like your public internet one, P9 Skins, NLRAB, local skinheads. But then we have the true ideological, those who follow the true ideology of hate or the religion of hate. There's actually a very far-right religion called Christian Identity that promotes Aryans being above other races throughout it. Mm-hmm. And those true hate groups like that will follow in line with that. So one of the biggest things we see now is if you look at the incidents of Dylan Roof, the South Carolina shooting, or Charlottesville, that incident, or even the El Paso shooting at Walmart, when you look at and I've read all the manifestos, I've watched these things, you're talking about, for some reason, they have this belief that other races and cultures are coming into the United States and they're going to replace the Anglo-white American like that. They're really trying to say, when you hear it, you will not replace us, and calling for this whole white separatist, white nationalism thing. Their push is what we call under the identity movement is they want to protect the Anglo or white European culture, which would be primarily your English, now your Irish, your German, and Scandinavian countries. They don't care about the other places, but they're looking to promote the cultures and heritage that come from regions in Europe that were traditionally, white or Caucasian. Mm-hmm. And they believe that our political structure is set to a way they don't care about the white Anglo heritage. And so by allowing the Hispanics over, Muslims over, Asians over, even maintaining the keeping of African Americans over there with everything geared in society is to promote their cultures, not ours. That at a point, the Anglo-white culture will go away. And so they do these acts trying to keep and inflame this tension and help recruit more, people into their cause.
Right, right. Well, you know as well as I was on the Aryan Brotherhood special, and I said they should be called the Heroin Brotherhood because they deals very close to the Mexican mafia, and hanging around Mexicans all the time, and so much for the mud people, right? But they're best friends with them a lot of times and hanging out with them all the time. But same thing with Public Enemy #1, the P9, Nazi lowriders, and Aryan Brotherhood. I see the hate symbols on them a lot of times, but my experience is so much that they're not so much into the racial ideology. That's more for white pride than really political empowerment or religious differences or anything like that. There's kind of like different groups, if you understand what I'm saying. But then we have other individuals, for instance, true skinheads I've talked to will tell me that they don't do drugs. They don't like the Aryan Brotherhood, these other groups that think they're frauds because they're bringing down the white race. And then you have the 14 words of David Lane, which we have covered on previous episodes, but you're well aware of. We must secure the existence, of white people in the future for our children. And there's that mindset that I think that Aryan Nations was very famous for, and other groups also that is seems to be scarier to me because it seems like a lot of these lone wolf type of guys, whether they join a group like that or not, it's more than just a theme song or this is what we wish would happen, what would be nice to happen. They actually want to take direct action towards other individuals and take them out. And they're okay. Skinheads will tell me, hey, I don't do drugs. I'm not with any white person that does drugs other than maybe marijuana, no hard stuff, because it'll bring down the white race. They're okay with minorities doing it and all that because that will bring down the people of color. So it's kind of interesting talking to them. And then other individuals, they will cite passages from like the Bible is real popular and totally interpret it a different way. And I consider myself Christian, probably don't attend church as much as I should, but I try to make it for Easter and Christmas, what I'm saying? Hey, hopefully the Lord will forgive me. But I believe in the higher power and the good over evil. I don't really flaunt my religious. I'm not what some people call Bible thumpers or anything like that. I don't force my beliefs politically or religious on other people. But I do have some, I think, foundations in the Christian world. I used to go to Bible studies and stuff like that. But I never remembered the Bible being taught like that, the way some of these guys do. Where it's just interesting to me, the mindset, how they will, like you said, they think that they're under siege. That would be a good word for it. Under siege by all these outsiders, all these foreigners. And it's just, they then take that, what might be individual differences that most of us are okay with, and then take it to the extreme. It's just, what's going on there?
Yeah, exactly. You pretty much nailed it. You just described the major issue of Christian identity, and it's that far right religion that is followed by the Klan. A lot of your prominent far right extremist groups are following Christian identity. Timothy McVeigh was adherent to Christian identity, in which their belief is, going back to the tooth seed theory, is that you had Adam and Eve, and they produced Abel and Cain, and at some point, and basically Abel's representative of the true, white Aryan. Well, step back a little bit. Adam and Eve, when they get kicked out of the garden, they had produced Abel. Well, Eve met up with the serpent, which represents Satan, and produced Cain. And so Abel is representative of all white Aryans. And with Eve mating with the serpent, the devil, Satan, producing Cain, and that was the Jew. And then they go down to even before man was on Earth, there was these non-human life forms, and that's all the other races. That's where your term mud people come from, whole mud directives. But they read the same Bible we do, and everything, but they interpret it in such a way to instill fear and hatred towards other people. And even if you go on to the like Aryan Nation sites, Christian Identity Ministries back in the day, even currently the Klan sites, you'll find out there's a lot of really directed religious things that are directed and targeting other ethnicities as being a threat to the white Anglo-European culture.
Can you tell our viewers a little bit about Zog? I always hear a lot about Zog with these groups. It kind of ties into it's that's what made me think about it when you were talking about that the Jew, the mud people, and the evil people of the world, the offspring of Cain. Can you tell us a little bit about the belief in Zog and how that relates?
Yeah, a lot of the pro-white supremacist, white national extremist groups believe that we basically sold this country out and it's basically controlled. Our government is in collusion with Israel or the Jewish people. And they believe that the Israelis or Jewish people control the banks, the media, the financial institutions, and basically all levels of government. So they feel the Zionists, that it's more or less our government's controlled by the Zionists. So Zog is the Zionist occupational group. And they believe, and so any of these extremists, if you're an employee of a federal government, or a lot of them, if any level of government above the county level, they won't recognize state or federal level that you're part of Zog. And back in the 80s, that's where we started seeing a lot of the sovereign citizens movement start flourishing with it. It was very, very heavily white supremacist, white nationalist hate and focusing on the Jewish population. And we've seen it cross all racial barriers nowadays with sovereign citizens. But it's basically the belief is that our government basically is being controlled by Israel and the Jews.
That they're the puppet masters and there's a shadow government and all that. Yeah. To me, it's interesting to listen to them, but I'm like, really? But they truly believe it, and they'll back it up with their facts. I know their common term now is, alternative facts. I will say alternative universe. Like, they come up with all this stuff.
Like, when I supervised the state leader of Aryan Nations, he'd come in, and I knew how I could ask a couple of questions and push his buttons to get a response. And he would just go off about the Jewish and Israel and our government, which is great resources and a learning tool. In the same way as, I was out in Orange County and we did a home call on the Grand Dragon of the Imperial Clans of America who lived in Orange County, who would have thought. And, but he was on informal probation, but he had search and seizure waivers. So if I had that Fourth Amendment waiver, I was in the door. And we went out there and got pictures of cross burnings. And I said, what's with the cross burning? And boy, they went off and gave me a whole dissertation about the whole religious aspect of what the cross lighting is and the symbolic, which is great when I teach or I have to testify. I didn't learn this from National Geographic or law enforcement. I learned that from the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan or state leader of Aryan Nations. And so
it's direct experience. Yes.
Dispute that.
Yeah. That's invaluable experience to try to understand. I mean, I still, after talking to all these guys, I still don't understand it, but I think I've gotten better at, like you said, interviewing, maybe skills, interrogation skills, of getting to these people, because I'm kind of like, what?
Yeah, for a while
you are nuts. I try not to say out loud, you're nuts, but I'm thinking that.
Yeah, I do. Once I became focused on that, my department didn't believe we had a white supremacy issue in Southern California or Orange County, and they could do it half time. And when I started dealing with my caseload numbers, were getting like 200 because if they were on that, I was in their business. And then they're like, oh, we better get you help. And when I retired, they have 4 probation officers working white supremacy full time. But I also, once I started doing that, then I started getting involved in, because I found so many of these groups were tied to militia groups and so I started dealing with those. Then kind of what gave me a break a little bit, I kind of got voluntold to start doing the outlaw motorcycle gangs. And so I started supervising a lot of the motorcycle gangs. So if I was getting really, really saturated with a lot of the white supremacy thing, I could, focus with the bikers.
Right.
Back and forth.
Right. Well, I was just going to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about your consulting and training services, your private
What
business that you?
my partner and I, he retired a few years after I did, and what we decided to do, I moved out of California primarily. I now reside in Las Vegas. It's cheaper, it's nicer. We come out here all the time. And he retired, and his background, he worked narcotics, then he became my partner. And he's actually probably one of the guys that's been able to last the longest with me. Since I started doing white supremacist type stuff, I went through 8 or 9 partners. And so never promoted, didn't want to promote, even though I had the highest level of education in our department, and because I love the field. But what we do is we present consulting services, training service for the public and the government on domestic terrorism, domestic extremism. We could do, for our courses, we could design any type of training course we need to deal with, let's say if they wanted just a quick 2-hour course on QAnon, we could do that all the way to 4 8-hour courses on domestic extremism. We're also available for expert testifying for court cases, in which I've done several times throughout my professional career. And so it's just trying to bring out our vocational experience. We try to portray ourselves as scholar practitioners. So you can literally get a bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, become a doctorate, and write books about white supremacy. And we'll like this stuff, but we try to bring that we dealt with these people. We went to their homes, we talked to them, we talked to their families. We've been in fights with these people. We've been arresting these people. We've have the talk with these people, whether they're from low-level skinheads to the Grand Dragon and the Ku Klux Klan, and some of these guys are tied to very, very famous people. I confiscated a letter from the state leader. He was trying to write a letter he was actually reaching out to Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah, and he wanted to start, basically his idea is start targeting Jewish populations in the United States. And my enemy is a brother of mine. And we entered a letter. I also intercepted a letter he was writing to Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. So try to bring these experiences, because it wasn't so much, we were enforcement, but we also had the social aspect with it as being probation. So we try to bring a well-rounded experience and with dealing with these type of movements and groups, including research.
Right. Well, it sounds like you're kind of like me, a pracademic. I have the academic type of credentials, teaching credentials, but then I also have the direct experience like you, and practical experience, because sometimes I think it's like sometimes it's like, well, you coming from a totally different direction into to merge the two. I commend you for doing that. It's hard to do sometimes, to kind of tailor your service to meet the needs of the different groups and individuals. It's not always easy to do. I know that.
What we do too is, over the course of time, we've collected a lot of paraphernalia. And so we bring those things in to show them, because we got Klan flags, we got neo-Nazi uniforms, we got anniversary editions, we got bomb timers. And so we try to bring that, you can see it on TV, but seeing what they have and possess, and the meanings of these things. So we, like you say, a lot of stuff academia, once you start dealing with mental health issues, drug abuse, a lot of those books go right out the window. And so it's that practitioner, which is really important. Good balance of both is really important today.
Yes. I totally understand. Well, it sounds like it's great. And we will put up for you viewers that might be interested in Mr. Smith's services, we will have his links to, get a hold of him if you are interested in having him help you out there. Over your career, and I know you did a lot of different things you just told us about, what would you say are some of your greatest accomplishments?
Who would have thought nowadays that we have an issue in white supremacy? I grew up in Southern California, very racially diverse. And I grew up going to Mexico and all down there. I think my greatest accomplishment is, being able to help society maybe identify something, a dangerous thing, and maybe teach them about this, because these groups don't have barrios. They don't have hoods. They don't, throw graffiti and plaque up their walls about their neighborhoods, but they could be right next door to you. And I think that's my greatest accomplishment it's quite a long time ago. I got a call from the FBI just after the Wisconsin Sikh temple shooting with Page went down there. And, they said, do you remember him? I said, yeah, he was at a house that we did in Orange. We did a search. He wasn't on probation or supervision, but full of hardcore white supremacists there. And who would have thought that several years later, this guy would go up and do a shooting and kill someone that we knew. And I think my greatest accomplishment is being allowed to maybe expose and help generate the conversation about this stuff, because it's not, it's very, very troubling. And at some points, I even fear that there's an acceleration of some of the violence. And so I say being allowed to be involved in it, I think it's great.
It sounds like what you're saying, you feel good about bringing a greater awareness, and I'm sure you have actually prevented a lot of, it's hard to prove when something happens. A lot of times in law enforcement, we're very reactive. It's hard to prove that you prevented something from happening, because they're like, oh yeah, well, it didn't happen. Where's the proof? Where's the proof kind of thing? Where's the, where's the evidence-based data and all that, but I'm like, okay, well, I know that I'm pretty sure I helped stop something.
And one thing I do like is every once in a while I'll get hit up on Facebook or something like that from someone I supervised that was tied to like PNI or some of these groups that we got them the help for their addiction, and they took it seriously. And we could provide the tools, but really they have to do the work. And I really like when people will check in and say, hey, just so you know, here's how I'm doing. And
Excellent.
And to me, that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Moved, they're married, they're good jobs. And I even helped them, some of them clean their records up, and they are now considered the term normies. Like this, but that's worthwhile.
They're back on the right path. Yeah, that does feel. We don't see it a lot, but it does feel good. I totally can relate when that happens. I've had similar things happen with me. So what would you say then? I know you've had some challenges too, and sometimes it seems like our own system and people we work with can make things difficult. What would you say are some of your biggest hurdles? History repeats itself, and this is 1920, 22. This is where there's huge Klan rallies and stuff. This is 2020, yet we're still seeing a lot of this crazy stuff. Why is it that we can't? It seems like get past that. Why are we sometimes, I would say, going around, it feels like we're going around circles sometimes. What would you say are some of the biggest hurdles and reasons for that?
I think our biggest hurdles that I had to overcome, what I've seen, is with our own administrations. And you kind of hit on it, is, it's like, okay, in Orange County, you could, if you're a gang member, you're Hispanic or Asian. There's no white gangs. No, there's a lot of white gangs. Mm-hmm. And some of just the lack of awareness, or not wanting to be aware of culturally what's taking place in our society. And, we had the Ku Klux Klan, I did a raid on the Grand Dragon in the city of Orange, and they were shocked by it. Well, it should be nothing new. I was just a PO, and, to me, it's just it's not being aware of it, it's not preparing for it. The possibility of it. It's like you want to be the three monkeys that hear no evil, say no evil, thing. And I think that is just one to ignore it. And that's more perplexing to me, is pretending that these things don't exist and that these things can't happen, or can't happen in the land of Disneyland. And people don't understand there are, very, very run down, dangerous areas right at the place near Disneyland, and it's not. And so I think it's our administrations, our public policy people are the more of the people that are frustrating. And I have a master's in public administration, and we ignore it.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's we don't want to overreact. We don't want to say hey, everything's going to be World War III tomorrow. Sound like some of the crazy people we deal with. But then again, we don't want to be in denial either, underreact. Right. It seems like a lot of times the real estate associations, as we know, housing is very expensive now. They don't want in Orange County or other parts of the country to know, hey, we have these groups. And it's interesting too, because I see even in the media and when people talk about, Crips, Bloods, Serenos, Norteños, these gangs, but yet, no, these are groups like it's just, a Sunday weekend group, to get together, have a few beers, no big deal. It's even in the description sometimes we use for these, it seems to set up denial. The school districts, they don't want parents to think, hey, we got problems in our schools. The government officials, one of the biggest ones is, hey, we don't want to tell people our community has some really, really big problems, drug or homeless or gang or hate group problems. They want to kind of sweep that all away, for public image, it seems like.
Exactly. If you look at Huntington Beach, and I was assigned to a task force in Huntington Beach when at one point P&I was putting those threats out on law enforcement officers, judges, DAs. I was over there in task force. Huntington Beach doesn't have a gang unit. They don't, because the thought is there's no gangs in Surf City, USA. And they do have gangs there. We had P&I, we had Aryan Brotherhood, Nazi Lowriders. They have the Slater areas, which Hispanic gangs. They have a lot of gangs there. So it's trying to give that perception that there's no problems when there really is, and not allocating the proper resources to deal with those issues until they blow up. Then it becomes more of a bigger problem at that time.
Right. Well, like you said, a lot of times I think we all stereotype. We do. We all have our biases, and I think they don't see individuals wearing their pants lower, tagging on walls, and wearing gang colors, and so we have no gangs. But these groups operate much like gangs. Sometimes there's very little difference. It's just they look different, and so to accept that not all of these groups and individuals that do harm all operate or look the same.
Right, exactly. There's definitely, I used to get calls from law enforcement all the time. If I goes and I'd be a hardcore white supremacist guy, if I go to his house, will I find meth? No, you're not going to find meth. You'll find Tylenol, Bear. You won't find Corona. You might find Heineken. Some of them take it to that extreme with it. That people have to understand is just we can't cookie cutter our approach to everything. Not all gangs or groups operate the same. So we really have to up our, I don't want to say education, but our knowledge base of all the different things, because we're a very complex society. So why try to make it so simplistic? And when it's not, the issues aren't simplistic, and the issues facing society. So it's very complicated. So we have to have that knowledge base. And one of the hardest things about my career is we had absolutely no training on white supremacy or gangs or anything. So I had to go to the ADL and get training, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the FBI. Then I started spending hours and hours and hours on my own reading on these movements and these groups, and be to the point then being able to start providing the training. But we're way behind behind the times when we should have already had that training, going forward.
Very good, very good. Well, it's a very interesting, sometimes very sad, scary topic. But like you said, I think we can't be in denial. We have to be educated, aware, and then, like you said, then be proactive. We shouldn't have to deal with the trauma and hurt that families feel after these mass shootings, or it doesn't even have to be mass shootings. Sometimes just attacks, sometimes mental attacks on anybody who's being victimized. And I think we got to be a lot more proactive. I know I'm teaching the choir here, but it just seems like, man, sometimes we don't seem to learn our lessons, that we need to do a lot more before it happens. It costs a lot. Not only does it cost less in dollars, but in human toll, if we're proactive.
Yeah, if you look at the Buffalo thing, when my phone started blowing up when it was going down, and I got hold of the manifesto fairly quick, and I read it that night, all 180 pages, and I read his manifesto and compared it with Toronto from New Zealand and Roofs and the Walmart shooters and down in El Paso and all these things. And it's scary that someone 18 years old that did that much research, but you could see the development and his anxiety or his hatred towards populations and his justification or why he chose that population and not an Asian population. And he even talks about being led to being that views at the age of 12, and here he is 18. So 6 years, this guy has been simmering, and to a point, that powder keg exploded.
Right, right. Yeah, so we got to recognize those signs before it gets to that point.
Right.
Parents, teachers, us as community neighbors. Yes, yes, definitely. We need to do a lot more. Well, I thank you for the service you provide, sir, and the training you provide. And like I said, we'll put that website up there, contacts there for Mr. Smith here at the end. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go today?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate giving me a chance to speak about it. Like I say, hope everyone has a good time and be safe out there.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. You take care. All right. Bye-bye.